Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he hefted another bag of trash into the back of his collection truck. The morning sun was already beating down on the streets of New Detroit, and he had 12 more blocks to cover before his shift ended. 23 years of collecting garbage had taught him to find peace in the routine. But today felt different somehow. As he rounded the corner onto Maple Street, something metallic caught his eye in Mrs. Henderson's recycling bin. Marcus had seen every kind of electronic waste imaginable, but this device was unlike anything he'd encountered. It was roughly the size of a shoebox, covered in what looked like rust, with strange symbols etched into its surface that seemed to shimmer when he moved it. Probably some kid's science project, he muttered. But something made him hesitate before tossing it into the truck. The metal felt warm to the touch, almost alive. And those symbols definitely weren't from any Earth language he knew. Back at the depot, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the strange device. During his lunch break, he pulled it out of his locker and examined it more closely. The rust wasn't really rust at all, he realized. It was more like a protective coating that had worn away in places, revealing a beautiful blue-green metal underneath that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. As he ran his finger along one of the symbols, the device suddenly hummed to life. A holographic display flickered into existence above it, showing what looked like star charts and alien text. Marcus nearly dropped it in surprise, his sandwich forgotten on the table beside him. Then came the voice. Soft, desperate, and definitely female. Speaking in accented English with words that seemed to struggle to form properly. Please, if anyone can hear this, I need help. My name is Zara, and I'm trapped on a mining station in the Kepler system. The rebellion has taken control, and they don't know who I really am. I managed to hide this emergency transmitter in a supply shipment before they captured me, but I don't know if it will ever reach anyone who can help. The voice paused, and Marcus could hear the sound of distant explosions in the background. I know this is reaching some random world, probably filled with primitive beings who have never left their own solar system. But please, if there's any chance you can help, any way you can reach the Galactic Council, tell them Princess Zarathala of the Vixen Empire is alive. Tell them the coordinates I'm transmitting. Tell them. Tell them I'm sorry I failed them. The transmission cut off, leaving Marcus staring at the now silent device in shock. His first instinct was to dismiss it as an elaborate prank, but the desperation in the girl's voice had been real. And those star charts floating above the device showed a level of technology that was impossible to fake with current Earth capabilities. Marcus looked around the empty break room, making sure no one was watching, then carefully tucked the device into his jacket. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. But he couldn't ignore a cry for help, even if it came from across the galaxy. That evening, Marcus sat in his small apartment, the alien transmitter on his kitchen table. He'd spent hours researching everything he could find about the Kepler system, space communication, and anything else that might be relevant. The scientific papers were mostly over his head, but he understood enough to know that what he was holding should be impossible. The device activated again at exactly 8:47 p.m., and Zara's voice filled his kitchen once more. This time, she sounded weaker, more desperate. Day 3 of captivity. The rebel leader, Commander Vex, is growing suspicious. He keeps asking me why a simple maintenance worker knows so much about the station's security systems. I've been trying to help the other prisoners escape, but I can't risk revealing my identity. If Vex discovers who I really am, he'll use me as leverage against the entire galaxy. Marcus found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed in her words. I've been thinking about my father's lessons about leadership. He always said that true power comes not from commanding others, but from serving them. I never understood what he meant when I lived in the palace, surrounded by servants and luxury. But here, among these brave rebels fighting for their freedom, I'm beginning to see. There was another pause, filled with the sound of approaching footsteps. Someone's coming. If anyone receives this, please don't give up on us. We're in Sector 7, Level 12 of the mining station. The coordinates are. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only static. Marcus stared at the device for a long moment, then made a decision that would change everything. He opened his laptop and began typing an email to every space agency, university, and government contact he could find. He knew they'd probably think he was crazy, but he had to try. The response was swift and predictable. Most ignored him completely. A few sent polite form letters about not accepting unsolicited communications about extraterrestrial life. But one response was different. Dr. Sarah Chen, from the Institute for Deep Space Communication, had written back within hours. Mr. Marcus, your message is intriguing. While I cannot comment on any official government projects, I would be very interested in examining the device you described. Can you meet me tomorrow at the coordinates I'm attaching? The coordinates led to a nondescript office building downtown. Marcus arrived early, the transmitter carefully wrapped in his old army jacket. Dr. Chen turned out to be a small, intense woman, in her 50s, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. I need you to understand something before we begin, she said, as she led him to a secure room in the building's basement. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. The government has been monitoring extraterrestrial communications for decades. We've received dozens of distress signals from across the galaxy, but we've never had the technology to respond. She gestured to a wall of sophisticated equipment that Marcus didn't recognize. Until now. Project Lighthouse has been developing deep space communication arrays, capable of sending messages across interstellar distances. But we've never tested them with actual alien technology. Marcus unwrapped the transmitter with shaking hands. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she saw the device, and she immediately began connecting it to her equipment. This is remarkable, she breathed. The technology is at least 1,000 years ahead of anything we have. But there's something else. These power signatures. This isn't just any alien device. This is royal technology. Whoever sent this message isn't just some random prisoner. The transmitter activated again, and Zara's voice filled the room. But this time, her message was different. They know. Vex discovered my identity an hour ago. The entire galaxy is watching now, waiting to see if the princess of the Vixen Empire will break under torture. But they're wrong about one thing. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of failing the people who believe in me. Her voice was steady despite the obvious pain she was in. I've learned something important during my time here. Real strength doesn't come from the power to destroy, but from the courage to protect others. Even when it costs everything. The rebels who captured me aren't evil. They're desperate people fighting against an empire that forgot how to serve its citizens. Maybe my father was wrong. Maybe the old ways of ruling through fear and force are truly dead. Dr. Chen was frantically working at her controls, trying to establish a two-way connection. If someone out there can hear this, please remember my words. Power without compassion is just tyranny with a crown. True leadership means being willing to sacrifice everything for those who depend on you. I only wish I had learned this lesson before it was too late to matter. The transmission began to fade, but not before Marcus heard something that made his heart race. In the background, barely audible above the static, was the sound of laser fire and someone screaming orders in what sounded like English. Got it, Dr. Chen shouted suddenly. I've established a connection. We can send a message back. Marcus grabbed the microphone without hesitation. Zara. Zara. This is Marcus from Earth. We received your transmissions. Help is coming. Don't give up. The response was immediate and filled with shock. Earth? But that's impossible. Earth is just a primitive world in the outer rim. How can you possibly help? Marcus smiled grimly. You're about to find out what humans are capable of when someone asks for our help. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was unlike anything in the organization's history. Representatives from every major nation sat around the table, their faces grave as Dr. Chen presented the evidence of Princess Zara's distress signals. The alien transmitter sat in the center of the table, its blue-green surface pulsing softly. "Gentlemen and ladies," the Secretary General began, "we are facing a situation that will define humanity's place in the galaxy. We have the opportunity to rescue a galactic princess and potentially establish diplomatic relations with an advanced alien civilization." The Russian representative leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing? We have no military presence in space. No way to reach this Kepler system." Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing Earth's current space assets. "Actually, we have more capabilities than you might think. The secret Joint Space Program has been developing deep space vessels for the past decade. We have 3 ships capable of interstellar travel, though they were designed for exploration, not combat." End quote. Marcus watched from the gallery, still amazed that a simple garbage man was sitting in on meetings that would reshape human history. The transmitter in his jacket pocket had activated twice more during the journey to New York, each time bringing more desperate messages from Zara. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," came Zara's latest transmission. "Commander Vex is using my capture to rally more systems to his rebellion. He's promising them that the fall of the royal family will bring freedom to the outer territories. I can hear my guards discussing plans to broadcast my execution across the galaxy." But there was something different in her voice now. A strength that hadn't been there before. "Strange as it sounds, my time with these rebels has taught me more about ruling than all my years in the palace. These people aren't fighting because they're evil. They're fighting because they're hungry, because their children are sick, because they've been forgotten by an empire that takes their resources and gives nothing back." Marcus found himself nodding. He understood that feeling. The sense of being invisible to the powers that made decisions about your life. "I've been talking with the other prisoners," Zara continued. "They tell me stories of worlds strip-mined until they're uninhabitable. Of families separated by forced labor conscription. Of entire species driven to extinction for the sake of imperial profit. How can I claim the right to rule over people when my own family has caused so much suffering?" The American Secretary of Defense stood up. "We need to make a decision quickly. Our intelligence suggests that this princess isn't just any royal. The Vixen Empire controls over 1,000 star systems. If we can rescue her, we're talking about potential trade agreements, technology sharing, and protection from hostile alien forces." The Chinese representative looked skeptical. "And if we fail? What happens when we reveal to the galaxy that Earth has military capabilities? We could be painting a target on our entire planet." Dr. Chen touched her earpiece as another message came through. "She's transmitting again." This time, Zara's voice was barely a whisper, clearly trying not to be overheard. "They're moving me tomorrow to a public execution chamber. Vex wants the entire galaxy to watch the princess of the Vixen Empire die as a symbol of his revolution. But I've made a decision. I'm going to tell the galaxy the truth about what I've learned here." There was a long pause filled with the sound of her breathing. "I'm going to renounce my claim to the throne and offer to help Vex negotiate a fair peace with the Empire. These rebels deserve to be heard, not crushed. Maybe my death can accomplish something my life never could." Marcus stood up suddenly, drawing startled looks from the assembled diplomats. "With all due respect, sirs and madams, you're missing the point," the Secretary General frowned. "Mr. Marcus, you're here as a witness, not a participant, but I'm the one she's been talking to," Marcus said firmly. "I'm the one who heard the pain in her voice when she thought no one in the universe cared enough to help. You're all sitting here talking about trade agreements and political advantages. That girl is going to die tomorrow, and she's trying to turn her execution into something meaningful because she's lost hope that anyone will save her." He pulled out the transmitter and set it on the table. "I've spent 23 years picking up after people, being invisible, being ignored. I know what it feels like to think nobody sees you or cares about what happens to you. But humans don't leave people behind. That's what makes us special. Not our technology or our military might, but the fact that we'll risk everything to save someone who asked for our help. The room fell silent. Finally, the American president spoke up. Mr. Marcus is right. We're not approaching this as politicians or military strategists. We're approaching it as human beings. General Morrison, how quickly can we mobilize our deep space fleet? General Morrison, a stern woman with silver hair, consulted her tablet. The USS Defiance is our most advanced vessel. It can make the journey to the Kepler system in 72 hours using our new quantum drive technology. But it's equipped for exploration, not military operations. What about weapons? The British representative asked. Limited. Defensive plasma cannons and electromagnetic pulse missiles. Nothing that would match a military installation. Marcus found himself speaking again. Maybe weapons aren't the answer. Zara said the rebels aren't evil, just desperate. What if instead of going in with guns blazing, we went in as negotiators? What if we offered to help broker peace between the rebels and the Empire? Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments. That's actually brilliant. According to the galactic communication protocols we've been monitoring, Earth has never been involved in interstellar politics. We could present ourselves as neutral mediators. The Secretary General nodded slowly. A rescue mission, disguised as a diplomatic intervention. It could work, but who would we send? We need someone with diplomatic experience. Someone who understands negotiation. Send me, Marcus said quietly. The room erupted in surprised murmurs, but Marcus pressed on. I'm the one she's been talking to. I'm the one who made contact. And I understand what it's like to be overlooked, to be treated like you don't matter. Maybe that's exactly what this situation needs. General Morrison shook her head. With all due respect, Mr. Marcus, this is an incredibly dangerous mission, requiring specialized training. Then give me the training, Marcus replied. How much time do we have? 72 hours? I've learned harder things in less time. The president looked around the room, reading the faces of his colleagues. General Morrison, select your best diplomatic and military advisors. If Mr. Marcus is willing to risk his life for this mission, then we owe him every possible preparation. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of intensive training. Marcus learned basic galactic protocol, defensive combat techniques, and emergency diplomatic procedures. He practiced using advanced translation software and studied everything available about Vixen Empire politics. The USS Defiance was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Sleek and powerful. It looked more like a work of art than a spacecraft. Captain Sarah Rodriguez, a veteran of the secret space program, briefed him as they prepared for departure. The quantum drive will get us there in record time, but we'll be arriving in the middle of a war zone. Our diplomatic immunity only goes so far. As Earth fell away behind them, Marcus activated the alien transmitter one more time. To his surprise, he got through immediately. Marcus? Zara's voice was weak, but filled with amazement. How is this possible? I can barely detect your signal, but it's so much stronger now. We're coming for you, Marcus said simply. The entire human race is coming to help. There was a long silence on the other end. But why? You don't even know me. Your people gain nothing from this. Marcus smiled, thinking of all the conversations they'd had over the past few days, all the pain and hope he'd heard in her voice. That's exactly why we're coming. Because you asked for help, and because it's the right thing to do. Hold on just a little longer. We're going to get you out of there. And then we're going to help you fix the problems that caused this rebellion in the first place. I don't understand, Zara whispered. What kind of people are humans? Marcus looked out at the stars rushing past the ship's viewports, thinking about his decision to answer a desperate plea from across the galaxy. The kind who believe everyone deserves to be rescued. The mining station loomed before them like a metal asteroid, bristling with defensive weapons and swarming with rebel ships. Captain Rodriguez brought the USS Defiance to a halt just outside the weapons range, her crew tense at their stations. Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space, came a harsh voice over the communications array. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Marcus took a deep breath and activated the transmitter. This is Marcus Chen of Earth, requesting permission to dock. We're here as neutral mediators to discuss the situation with Princess Zarathala. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Then, explosive laughter erupted from the speakers. Earth? The primitive backwater planet? Commander Vex, I presume? Marcus kept his voice calm and respectful. We understand your skepticism. But we're here because Princess Zara asked for help, and humans don't abandon people who reach out to us. The laughter stopped abruptly. How do you know about the princess's transmissions? Those were sent on encrypted royal frequencies. Because I'm the one who received them. Marcus replied. I'm a garbage collector from New Detroit. 3 days ago, I found her transmitter in a recycling bin. Since then, I've listened to her stories about the rebellion, about the suffering of your people, and about the failures of the Empire. Another long silence, then a different voice came through the speakers. Zara's voice, filled with disbelief. Marcus, is that really you? You actually came? I told you we would. Marcus smiled. Are you all right? I'm alive. But Marcus, you don't understand what you've walked into. This isn't just about rescuing me anymore. Commander Vex has united 17 star systems against the Empire. If this rebellion fails, billions will die in the Imperial retaliation. Commander Vex's voice cut back in, sharp with suspicion. How do we know this isn't some Imperial trick? Earth isn't supposed to have interstellar travel capabilities. Marcus exchanged glances with Captain Rodriguez, who nodded encouragingly. Because we're not here representing any empire or galactic power. We're here representing the idea that when someone asks for help, you help them. No politics, no hidden agendas, no territorial ambitions, just one sentient being helping another. That's impossible. Vex sputtered. No species develops space travel without conquest as a primary motivation. Humans did, Marcus said simply. We developed it because we wanted to explore, to learn, to find our place in the universe. And now that we've found someone who needs help, we're here to offer it. Captain Rodriguez leaned into the microphone. Commander Vex, we're transmitting our ship's specifications and crew manifest. As you can see, this is an exploration vessel with minimal weapons. We came here to talk, not to fight. Hours of tense negotiation followed. Marcus found himself serving as an intermediary between Vex's rebels and Zara, helping them understand each other's perspectives. The princess had been right about the rebels' motivations. They weren't evil or power-hungry. They were desperate people fighting against systemic oppression. The Outer Rim colonies haven't received Imperial aid in over 50 years, explained Vex during one of their communication sessions. When the Kepler mining station's workers started dying from toxic exposure, we requested medical supplies. The Imperial governor told us that worker safety was a local problem. Zara's voice was quiet when she responded. I never knew. In the palace, all we received were reports about production quotas and profit margins. Nobody ever told us about the human cost. That's because the people making the reports were getting rich from the exploitation, Vex said bitterly. The imperial nobility lives in luxury, while entire worlds die to fuel their comfort. Marcus found himself thinking about his own experiences with inequality, about the wealthy neighborhoods where he collected garbage from people who never bothered to look at him. Commander Vex, what would it take for you to consider a peaceful solution? What would real change look like? 1. Complete autonomy for the Outer Rim. Vex replied immediately. The right to govern ourselves, control our own resources, and trade freely with whoever we choose. That's sedition, came a new voice over the communications array. The voice was deep, commanding, and filled with absolute authority. Marcus felt his blood run cold as Zara gasped audibly. Father, Emperor Zethkalar himself, Captain Rodriguez whispered, her face pale. The most powerful being in the galaxy just entered the conversation. My daughter, the Emperor's voice was cold as stellar void. You have caused considerable embarrassment to the crown. When we retrieve you from these terrorists, there will be consequences. I'm not leaving with you, Zara said, her voice stronger than Marcus had ever heard it. Not until we find a real solution to the rebellion. You will do as you are commanded, child. The Imperial fleet is already moving to crush this insurrection. In 6 hours, this mining station, and everyone on it, will be reduced to atoms. Marcus felt his hands shaking as he keyed the microphone. He was about to address the ruler of 1,000 worlds, a being who could erase his entire planet with a casual order. Your Imperial Majesty, this is Marcus Chen of Earth. With all due respect, that approach hasn't worked for 50 years. Maybe it's time to try something different. The silence that followed was deafening. When the Emperor spoke again, his voice was filled with dangerous curiosity. Earth, the primitive world that somehow developed interstellar travel without our knowledge. Tell me, little human, what makes you think you understand galactic politics better than an emperor who has ruled for 3 centuries? Marcus thought about all his conversations with Zara, about the pain in her voice as she learned about the suffering her family's rule had caused. Because I've spent the last 3 days listening to your daughter discover what real leadership means. She learned it from the rebels who captured her, from people who risk everything to protect others. Maybe the question isn't how to crush the rebellion, but how to build a government that doesn't create rebels in the first place. Fascinating perspective from a garbage collector. The Emperor's voice dripped with contempt. What exactly are you proposing? A new kind of government. One where the princess works alongside representatives from the Outer Rim colonies to create fair policies. Where decisions are made by people who understand the real cost of those decisions. Zara's voice cut in, filled with sudden understanding. A constitutional monarchy. Limited royal power. With real representation for all the systems. Impossible. The Emperor snapped. The Empire has ruled through strength for 10,000 years. And look where that's gotten us, Zara shot back. 17 systems in open rebellion. Billions of people suffering. And a princess who had to be captured by rebels to learn what leadership actually means. Commander Vex's voice was thoughtful. Princess, are you saying you would support Outer Rim autonomy? I'm saying I would support fair representation for everyone. No more strip mining worlds without environmental protections. No more forced labor conscription. No more governors who get rich while their people die. Marcus could hear the excitement building in her voice as she spoke. We could create a new kind of government, one that serves its people instead of exploiting them. The Empire has the resources and technology. The rebels have the knowledge of what actually needs to be fixed. Together, we could build something amazing. This is treason, the Emperor said flatly. This is evolution, Zara replied. Father, the old ways are dying. We can either adapt and grow, or watch everything burn in endless rebellions. Marcus found himself holding his breath as he waited for the Emperor's response. Finally, the ruler of 1,000 worlds spoke. Very well. You have 1 hour to present a formal proposal for this constitutional monarchy. If it fails to satisfy me, I will proceed with the destruction of this station. The next hour was the most intense of Marcus's life. Using the ship's advanced computers and communication systems, he helped Zara and Commander Vex draft a new governmental structure for the Vixen Empire. The document called for a parliament with representation from every system, environmental protection laws, workers' rights, and limits on royal authority. When they transmitted the proposal to the Emperor, his response was a long time coming. This document would fundamentally change the nature of imperial rule, he said finally. Yes, it would, Zara agreed. It would make us better rulers. Another long pause, then. Very well. I will agree to implement these reforms on a trial basis. But there are conditions. Well, one. Name them, Zara said immediately. First, you will marry within the year to secure the succession. Second, you will spend 6 months traveling to every system in the Empire, learning firsthand about the conditions of our subjects. Third, this human Marcus Chen will serve as your advisor during this transition. Marcus nearly choked on his own surprise. I'm sorry. What? You heard correctly, the Emperor continued. You demonstrated remarkable wisdom for a primitive being. Perhaps an outside perspective is exactly what this empire needs. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the royal flagship, watching as Princess Zara addressed a crowd of former rebels on a distant mining world. She was nothing like the desperate girl who had sent that first transmission. She had become a true leader, someone who listened to people's problems and actually solved them. Hard to believe it all started with a rusty transmitter in a garbage bin, Captain Rodriguez said, joining him at the viewport. Marcus smiled, thinking about all the changes that had swept through the galaxy since that day. The constitutional monarchy was working better than anyone had expected. Former rebels now served as governors and parliament members, working alongside reformed imperial officials to create fair policies. You know what the strangest part is? Marcus said. Zara never needed rescuing. She just needed someone to believe in her ability to be better than what she was born to be. On the surface below, Princess Zara was announcing the establishment of a new hospital and school, funded by redirecting money that had previously gone to building weapons. The crowd cheered as former Commander Vex, now serving as the planetary governor, stepped forward to thank her. Marcus's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Earth. His replacement on the garbage route was sending pictures of his own family, along with updates about the trade agreements and technological exchanges that had followed humanity's introduction to the galactic community. Not bad for a day's work, Marcus murmured to himself, then headed back to his quarters to prepare for the next planet visit. There were still hundreds of worlds to see, problems to solve, and people to help. After all, that's what humans did best.